Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Extraordinaire. Through this interview series, I'm attempting to profile people who've made an extraordinary impact in their respective fields to engage and uplift others and help them be the best versions of themselves. I'm humbled and honored today to introduce to you my mentor and guide, and someone whose presence in my life I cherish immensely, Katherine Mehta. With a specialization in international higher education, for the past decade, Katherine has worked closely with international high school students, mentoring them and helping them present the best versions of themselves in competitive admissions to universities and other institutions. Katherine graduated magna cum laude from Kenyon College, USA, and holds a certificate in college counseling from Columbia University Teachers College. She routinely conducts professional development workshops for IC3 and is a professional member of the International Association for College Admissions Counseling and the All India Independent Education Counsellors Network. Welcome, Katherine, ma'am. It's a delight to have you here today.
Thank you, Zahan. The pleasure is really all mine, and thank you for that warm introduction. I also think, I'm so grateful every day that I get the experience to work with you and with students like you. So thank you for that warm introduction.
To start with, what is a fun fact about yourself? This can be a favorite animal, food, hobby, or anything else.
Sure. So I'll go with a favorite hobby. So I love to cook and I love to bake, especially with my kids. I think that knowing how to cook is a really, really great life skill, but it's also a lot of fun. And I think, I've used cooking and baking to learn recipes from other countries and to even, teach and pass down things like recipes from my grandparents. And just generally, I think cooking, baking, food are a really wonderful way to connect with people.
What wonderful hobbies, Katherine, ma'am. And if I may say so, they're a double blessing as they nurture the mind through the creativity involved, as well as make one very therapeutic. So, my next question to you is it's really rare that career paths follow a straight line from where they started to where they are now. Would you care to share a little bit about who or what was your inspiration and some interesting experiences along the way that shaped you as a person?
Sure, absolutely. And I completely agree with you on this thought. And I see this both in the work that I do with students as well as in my own life. So, part of the work that I'm doing with students is helping them to chart out this plan, whether it's working towards a future career goal or towards a future university. And so, we're often talking about their 5 and their 10-year plan and where they see themselves in the future. But it's fun too to see how these plans change. So, often after a student has applied and gotten into university and they're there and they're studying, they'll come back to me and they'll tell me about what they're up to. So I've seen students who thought they would study psychology come back and tell me that they're graduating with a degree in data science, or someone who thought he would study finance, then switching to entrepreneurship after discovering how it was a better fit for his personality. So it's really wonderful to see how the different kinds of exposure and opportunities that students get open them up to different pathways, maybe different ones than what they had initially considered or planned for. And even in my own experience, I changed career paths quite a few times. So in college, I had majored in anthropology, and I thought that I would go on to work in the social sector space. But instead, after I graduated, I found myself working with students in an academic program in India focused on art history and architecture. So then for a while, I thought maybe historic conservation and preservation was my calling. But then eventually, I found myself working in this space with high school students and helping them navigate their transition to college and beyond. And I discovered that that's what I really, really love. So my path has been varied, it's moved through different things. And if you had asked me in high school or college what I would see myself doing in 10 years, at that point, I probably wouldn't have said, being an education counselor, working with students based in India. But in retrospect, if I look back, I can see how things aligned to bring me here. And I can also see how the work that I enjoyed most was teaching and mentorship and working with students. So there's sort of that commonality between the different things that I've done. And along the way, I've had some really, really fantastic mentors, including the director of the undergraduate program I had worked with before. She taught me a lot about life in India. She taught me about, how to appreciate the beauty of certain things, not just artwork, because we were studying art history, but even things like a good cup of tea. And so she's someone whom I still consider a mentor today.
Thank you so much, Katherine, ma'am. You make a very, very strong case for listening to one's gut and following one's heart, and how to integrate learnings from different streams across your career to grow as an individual and, of course, as a professional. And as always, hearing of other successes and how destiny plays a part in them makes one very hopeful and positive. So, before I ask you my next question, I'd just like to thank you for having gone through my audiobook, and I do hope you enjoyed it. In my eponymous poem L'Extraordinaire and several others, I've dwelt on how empathy is the superpower the world needs most today and how kindness is the panacea for many problems we face today. What do you feel about these two virtues, empathy and kindness?
So first, I absolutely agree with your sentiment. And I think that the two of them really do go hand in hand. So empathy is about truly connecting with people, understanding where they're coming from and the challenges that they may be facing. And kindness, on the other hand, is about treating other people the way that you would want to be treated. And when we have the two of them, working closely together, then I do think that they really are the ingredients for a more compassionate and humane world.
Thank you for wording that so eloquently, Catherine, ma'am. And I strongly believe, as I've said in my audiobook, Extraordinaire, empathy and kindness are the superpowers the world needs most today. So, my next question, I personally feel that ableism and social and structural issues like lack of accessibility continue to present barriers for people with disabilities around the world. Do you agree with this statement? And what, in your opinion, are the best ways to tackle them? Can you give some examples of the best practices you've come across?
Sure, absolutely. So 100% I do agree with this statement. And I think one of the best ways to try to tackle these issues is to build greater visibility around disability. So right now it can be very easy for people, even inadvertently to overlook it as a structural issue because especially in countries like India, it's so invisible. There are very few public figures who have disabilities. Disability support services, disability infrastructure aren't really built into the fabric of Indian cities or societies. So therefore, it's not something that really kind of permeates one's everyday life and it kind of slips into the background. One doesn't even realize that those structural issues or challenges are there. Therefore, I think one of the best ways to combat ableism is going to be to bring more visibility to it, and to do that by having conversations that shed light on the presence and impact of disability, just to make people more aware. And so I think that even the work that you're doing just about bringing greater visibility and having conversations around it is so, so important.
You've really nailed it, Catherine, ma'am. In fact, I strongly believe that if we educate children on the power of differentness starting young, it will come to them naturally. That our collectively lived experiences will ensure that solutions to social and structural issues that exist today fall in place organically. In your line of work, you deal with teenagers every single day, and that too at close quarters, perhaps a little too close. In what way do you think the pandemic has exacerbated the mental health crisis for people with mental health issues in this generation of teens?
Yeah, I think that's a great and really important question. So the teenage years are a really important time for young people to develop their sense of self. So this means that naturally they're starting to move away from their family as that main source of support and more towards their friend circles, especially as they start to develop this independent sense of identity. But I think the pandemic and lockdowns, made this very, very challenging for teens because they had limited exposure and limited access to their friends. And a lot of it then would have been through social media, which in and of itself poses these other challenges to mental health. So I think that was made it especially challenging for teens when it came to mental health. But broadly too, I think that the pandemic played to many people's fears of the future and unknown. So, I mean, this is everyone. This isn't just teenagers, but for a lot of people, it was just a very sort of anxious time. And this would have been detrimental to everyone's mental health.
I personally feel that the pandemic did exacerbate the mental health crisis among the youth. However, it was perhaps the first time that even those who conform to the generationally defined normal experienced isolation and hopelessness the way that the specially abled have done for generations. And this in turn has visibly accelerated dialogues around inclusion and equity, in normalized planning for the most vulnerable, and creating an environment where everyone can thrive. And this lends me hope for a kinder, more empathetic world ahead where everyone gets opportunities to contribute in their own unique ways. So, finally, could you please share some parting pearls of wisdom with our listeners on how we can make this world a kinder, more inclusive place to live in?
Sure, absolutely. So earlier we had spoken on the importance of empathy, and I think one of the most important and effective ways to build empathy is by deliberately exposing yourself to the experiences and to viewpoints of others. And there are so many different ways to do that. So whether it's travel, whether it's reading, whether it's listening to people, and really actively listening to people whose perspectives you disagree with and being open to at least hearing those, or just having conversations with people whose experiences are different from your own. I think that this kind of exposure, understanding is really, really fundamental to then building a sense of empathy. And so that would be sort of the foundation of my piece of advice, to expose yourself to as many people, ideas, experiences as you can, because it not only opens your mind, but also builds that empathy to relate to people from all walks of life.
Thank you so much, Katherine, ma'am. This was so enlightening and uplifting in equal measures. I look forward to partnering with you to do my part in spreading the sunshine on this very pertinent topic. Thank you once again for taking the time out.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for having me.